Hi, everyone. This is Traci Fenton, founder of WorldBlu, and it is so great to have you with me, either live or listening to the recording afterwards. We're going to be talking today about the CXO's five-step formula to a fearless and resilient mindset. I'm so happy to have you with me. I'm going to talk for about 25, 30 minutes and then open it up to any questions people might have. And stick around to the end. I have a very valuable free gift for you that's going to help you guide you with everything that we're talking about today. So let's get started. I am going to share my screen with you. And here we go. All right. So obviously, the whole idea of mental resilience, mental well-being, mental health is an extremely popular topic right now. And this is something that we've been talking about at WorldBlu for, gosh, almost the whole 28 years that we have been in business. And so I'm very excited to talk with you about our proven formula. 5 steps, proven formula to truly have a fearless, anxious-free, stress-free mindset. It's a practice that I have used almost my entire adult life, and I've been so honored to teach it to literally thousands and thousands of leaders worldwide. And I can't wait to share it with you now. So here's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to talk about a freedom-centered versus a fear-based mindset. What's the difference? The 5-step process for how to overcome fear, how to apply this proven process to yourself, how to use our proven process with your team, and we're going to look at the breakthrough results you can expect to get. So first, for those of you who don't know WorldBlu, it's your first time meeting us, I founded WorldBlu 28 years ago in 1997. We're an award-winning global leadership and culture training company dedicated to helping leaders and their teams lead with freedom over fear. What we do is we use our proven approach to empower organizations to cultivate trust, engagement, safety, joy, and healing in the workplace, creating environments that both uplift people in the world. So we have a global impact spanning over 100 countries. We've worked with dozens and hundreds actually of top brands around the world. And we've trained thousands of leaders around the world with our award-winning leadership and culture transformation strategies. We've worked with top companies that you will have known about WD-40, Zappos, DaVita, GE Aviation, Pandora, Groupon, Hulu, Meetup, Menlo Innovations, Achievers, Glassdoor. These are all brands that we've worked with along the way. So let's get into talking about having a freedom-centered versus a fear-based mindset. First of all, why does our mindset matter as leaders? I mean, does it really matter? And I think more and more people are realizing actually your mindset is where everything starts. And it absolutely matters because your mindset determines your success and the success of your team. If your mindset is, stressed out and downtrodden and negative, that's going to ripple out to affect every area of your life. And it certainly, as a leader, as a CXO, as a CEO, as a COO, as a CMO, it's going to impact your team as well. So it's really about learning how to have a discipline of thought, despite the stress and strain of life that keeps your mindset pointed in the right direction to have a freedom-centered rather than fearless mindset. And I'm going to teach you how in just a moment. I love this quote by Thomas Jefferson. He says, "Nothing can stop the man or woman with the right mental attitude from achieving his goal. Nothing on earth can help the man with the wrong mental attitude." And I think those of us listening to this certainly understand this very vital point. So something people don't realize is how much we actually have fear in our thinking. Sometimes people go, "Yeah, I get it. I know I'm afraid." Other times the ego comes in and people go, "I'm not afraid. What are you talking about? I don't get what you're saying." Well, let me share some research with you out of the Cleveland Clinic. They've identified that the average person has 60,000 thoughts a day, okay? But 95% of those thoughts are the exact same thoughts we had the day before. And 80% of those thoughts are negative and fear-based. So unfortunately, we often have more fear in our thinking than we realize. So, what's the problem with fear? Well, the problem with fear is that fear kills good decision making, bottom line growth, productivity and engagement, innovation, morale, truth, agility, well being, and it certainly kills leadership development. I love this quote by Zig Ziglar. He defines fear as this: fear has two meanings: forget everything and run, or face everything and rise. The choice is yours. So today we're going to talk about how to face everything and rise. So, leading yourself and others with a mindset of freedom and possibility, not fear, is what creates mental resilience. And mental resilience is what we all want right now. I love to look at the etymology of words, and I found it really interesting when I looked up the word resilient. What does it mean to be resilient or have mental resilience? And resilient comes from the Latin that means to leap. I mean, that kind of struck me as wow, I didn't know that. To be resilient is to leap forward, not backward. And that's what we want to be doing each day. We want to have that mental resilience that allows us, despite the strains and stress of life that every single one of us faces, we want to have that mental resilience to leap forward, not backward. So let's talk about how to get there. I was working with a CEO of a small company, about 15 people, and this CEO had been working in fear for about 30 years. He had a successful small business, about 3 million in revenue, 15 employees, but they had a very toxic work culture. And one day, actually, his CMO came to him and said, "Look, I heard Traci of WorldBlu speak at my alma mater, in fact, years ago." And the CMO said, "You need to hire WorldBlu or I'm going to leave the company." And he was one of their top employees. So the CEO came and spoke with us, and we assessed if he would be a right fit for us to work with. And he was. And I had the great privilege of coaching him. Uh, and we have other master coaches that do as well, but I got to coach the CEO. And when we first started working together, one of the things he said to me was, "I'm not afraid. I have no fear. I have no fear of anything." And I said, "Well, that's fine. Let's just take a deeper look at that." And as we started to work together, he started to realize how much fear he had. And about a year into the coaching and transformation and leadership work that we were doing with him and his leadership team, he finally came to a one-on-one coaching call with me one day. And he said, "Traci, I recognize that I am completely afraid about making this major decision that's going to take the company forward." He says, "This is the one fear that's actually holding us back from growing." And that's why they had been actually having negative growth. So we talked it through, and I used the process I'm going to teach you today on him. He had a massive breakthrough in the course of our coaching and made the decision to move the company forward. And I love what he said to me. He said, "I finally stopped letting my fear limit my company." And I think that's what's very important as CEOs. I'm a CEO myself, as executive leaders, as any leader. We have to make sure that our personal fear isn't hindering the growth of our organizations. Yes, it's hard. Yes, you have to work hard day in and day out. It's hard enough as it is, but make sure your fear isn't what's limiting your growth and the growth of your company. He had that breakthrough that transformed the company. I just got a note from him the other day that instead of having negative growth, they are now, they just saved $500,000 and they have 16% growth in an extremely competitive industry, which is digital publishing. And the morale is high. They're on fire. So it's just very exciting to see the kinds of transformations that can happen with the process I'm about to teach you. So, how do we have that freedom centered rather than fear based mindset that I'm talking about? Well, here's the story behind the 5-step process I'm about to teach you. When I was in my 20s, I was living in Washington, D.C. I was a full-time graduate school student. I had just started my company, WorldBlu. I was also working for the NASDAQ stock market, and I was traveling nonstop. It was an extremely demanding time. And to say I was stressed out, I was a stressed out 25-year-old is an understatement. So one day I called up a spiritual mentor of mine and told her, oh, all the problems that I was dealing with and all the stress, and kind of put it all out to her. And I just said, I don't know what to do. And she got very quiet and she says, Traci, I have one question for you. I said, what's the question? And she says, what would you do if you weren't afraid? How would you solve these problems? What would you shift in your life? What would you start doing? What would you stop doing if you weren't afraid? Well, that just landed so hard for me, but in the best possible way. And while I don't remember my entire thought process back in my 20s, what I remember is that I instantly felt so much lighter. I could see what I needed to do, the conversations I needed to have, the actions I needed to change in order to not have fear pressing on me and making all the decisions for me. The thing that's funny is, up until that moment when my mentor asked me that question, I didn't even realize that I was in fear. I didn't realize I was in fear at all. So it made a massive shift in my thinking. And from that shift, I've created this process called the power question practice. The power question practice. Why do I call it the power question? Well, because when we're in fear, we are not in our power. And when we're not in fear, we are absolutely in our power. So let me teach you the power question practice now. First, to get started, I want you to think of a challenge that you're dealing with, a challenge that you're facing. It could be professional, it could be personal, it could be a relationship, it could be an opportunity that you need to take, it could be any number of things. I want you to think of a real, tangible challenge, small or large, that you're facing right now. Have it in your thinking? Okay, great. Now we're going to walk through the 5 steps, and I want you to apply your challenge to those 5 steps. First of all, as you think about this challenge, the first question I want you to think about is, what exactly are you afraid of? Are you afraid, as you think about this challenge, of maybe what others will think of you if you take actions? Are you afraid of upsetting someone? Are you afraid of what if you fail and you take this action? Are you afraid of not thinking big enough? Are you afraid that you don't have enough money, resources, time? Are you afraid that you aren't enough? So I want you to get clear as you think about this challenge. What exactly are you afraid of as you think about it? The next question in our 5-step process is, why are you afraid? Are you afraid because of something that happened in the past that's made you afraid? Are you afraid because maybe your imagination is running wild and you're thinking about something that could happen as you think about this challenge and facing it down? Why exactly are you afraid? Now, Let's go to the third question, what I call the power question, which is this. What would you do? How would you solve that problem if you weren't afraid? If you weren't afraid of what others thought of you, if you weren't afraid that you could fail, if you weren't afraid that you weren't good enough, because you are good enough, what would you do if you weren't afraid? Think about that in a really tangible way. Next, question 4 of 5. How would you feel without the fear? Now, when I get to this question, and I use the power question just about every day, I'm always so amazed at how I would feel so energized, so excited, so ready to go, liberated, relief. How would you feel without the fear? And the last question is, why is it okay to let the fear go? We all say all the time, this popular song, let it go, right? Why is it okay to let it go? I think it's hard to just say, oh, I'm just going to let it go. Well, why? So, why is it okay to let it go? For me, I'm a deeply spiritual person. I trust God, I trust the universe that it's going to be okay to let the fear go and to trust. Maybe you see it differently. Maybe you go, wow, if I play this out to, a fear-based conclusion, it's actually going to be okay. I'm not going to end up under a bus. It's going to be all right. So why is it okay to let the fear go? Those 5 steps comprise what I call the power question practice. And as you think through these 5 questions, I would encourage you to grab a journal and each night before bed or early in the morning, think of a different challenge you're facing and apply these 5 questions to it. What are you afraid of? Why are you afraid? What would you do if you weren't afraid? How would you feel without the fear? And why is it okay to let the fear go? I also talk about this entire process in depth in my book, Freedom at Work. I have a whole chapter on freedom-centered mindset, so you can learn more there in my book, Freedom at Work. Let me give you an example of a CEO who asked himself the power question and did the power question process and had an incredible breakthrough. Vineet Nair was the CEO of HCL Technologies. This is one of our clients. They're a WorldBlu certified Freedom Center company. They're a huge public multinational company with 150,000 employees worldwide. Now, Vineet Nair is a very, very visionary CEO who ran his company on freedom-centered democratic principles that we teach, organizational democracy rather than organizational hierarchy. And he brought a freedom-centered rather than fear-based mindset to his team. But one day they started to experience a pretty severe economic crisis. It was impacting India and other parts of the world. He realized that they were going to have to find a way to save $100 million or he would have to lay people off. Now, typically that's what CEOs do. They get together with their executive team. They don't think very creatively and they just say, look, to save money, we're just going to let people go. But Vineet decided to ask himself the power question. What would I do if I weren't afraid? Would I be open and transparent with my employees? Would I tell them the problem before us and what we need to do to save jobs? He realized his answer was yes. So what would he do if he weren't afraid? He opened up. He went to his team and he said, look, here's the situation. We're facing a pretty severe economic downturn. We have to find a way to save $100 million or we're going to have to let people go. Do you have any ideas? And that was the key question where he said, do you have any ideas of how we can solve this problem? They created an internal intranet where people could submit ideas. They had hundreds of ideas, wonderful ideas come in. They were quickly able to implement 72 of those ideas that came from the people, from his employees across the company. They implemented 72 of those ideas. And rather than saving $100 million, his employees' ideas saved HCL $260 million. And no one was laid off. But it gets even better. While their competitors were laying off employees and massively hurting morale and their reputations, HCL continued to grow despite the economic downturn at 21% and even stayed profitable. This is such a huge example of what can happen as CEOs, as CXOs, when we choose to lead with a mindset of freedom and possibility rather than fear and control. And as we do this, it really impacts our ability to be mentally strong, mentally resilient, and to model that resiliency for our team. All right, so now I want you to think about how could you bring the 5-step power question process to your team? You can do it individually and you can do it collectively. Let me give you an example. One of our clients is WD-40. I think we all know the WD-40 spray, and they are a WorldBlu certified Freedom Center company as well. Their now CEO Emeritus, Gary Ridge, had learned about the power question practice through one of our trainings, and he went and had an executive retreat with his team. They were going through needing to make quite a few important decisions, and they hit a point where they needed to make a decision that everyone felt stuck on. And when we get stuck, it's usually because there's fear. So he decided to walk his executive team through those 5 questions I just went through of the power question practice. He did. They did it collectively, and they had a massive breakthrough in their thinking that got them unstuck and showed them strategically how to move forward. They've been able to apply many of the ideas that we've taught them. And as a result, thanks to a mindset of freedom over fear, Gary Ridge tells me our sales quadrupled and our market cap increased from $250 million to over $3 billion. And I love this picture of some of the WD-40 employees. That's the kind of impact this collective mindset transformation can have on you as well. Just imagine what it could do for your team. All right, so in summary, if you want to learn more about how to have a freedom-centered rather than fear-based mindset, you can certainly pick up my book, Freedom at Work. I'm also going to put in the links below a link to our free leadership guide on how to have a freedom-centered rather than fear-based mindset. And you can pick it up also on our website under our free resources section. So thank you so much for being with me today. It's been such a joy to share this process with you. It's made such a huge impact on my life and on the life of so many leaders we've worked with. I hope that you will take it and let it transform the way you lead as well. Thanks so much, and bye for now.